I think that African cities have insights and lessons to teach the continent, but also perhaps to teach the world as well.
In this week's Inside Africa, we travel to 3 iconic cities on the continent: Nairobi, Cape Town, and Lagos.
As African cities, the greatest strengths at the heart of these cities is in fact the people and their knowledge and their tenacity.
And explore how creative people are trying to redefine urban living for the future. These are Africa's next-gen cities. This is Inside Africa.
If we have to locate African cities in a global context, they are very different. Most African cities are predominantly informal, and that gives it a very unique character and set of logics. And if you will, we don't really have a precedent for that in other parts of the world.
Professor Edgar Pieterse leads the African Centre for Cities at the University of Cape Town, researching urbanism from a distinctly African perspective.
Since there isn't formal infrastructure or formal housing or formal jobs, most Africans are hustling all the time. And they are hustling in terms of trying to put food on the table, but also to get their kids educated and to access water and energy services and so forth. Now, within that, there is a form of intelligence. There's a capacity to innovate, to continuously adapt. And that is the knowledge that is at the center of what we need to harvest to be able to produce solutions that work for Africans and is responsive to African cultures.
Academics, artists and architects are helping to reshape the city with the local culture and needs in mind.
We're sitting in a time where we can be completely imaginative as to what we want an urban environment or a city, an African city, to look like. We can leapfrog whatever is tying us to some kind of problematic past, problematic infrastructure, way of being, and we can literally move into a future where anything is possible, because we have no choice but to radically imagine and speculate as to what that environment is going to be.
Philippa Tumubweinee fondly refers to architects as makers and is committed to building a more socially inclusive and environmentally sustainable world.
We have everything from net zero buildings to buildings built completely out of natural materials. There's an upswell of people who are experimenting with different ways of looking at how we build our built environment.
Portswood Cafe, located at Cape Town's V&A waterfront, is one of South Africa's first net zero buildings. The project was led by Kenyan community architect Kevin Kimwele.
Net zero waste building essentially means the building itself in its building process emits zero waste. No waste goes into landfill. It's a very big milestone because essentially this building is made up of about 98% recycled material from within this precinct. It's been 3 years in the making, so that's how thorough and detailed we've been in trying to produce a very circular building.
Everything from the bricks to the wood, steel and even the glass bottles were all recycled or upcycled.
For a very long time, I think we in Africa did not realize or were not appreciated in terms of the design authenticity we have or approach to circularity and sustainability, etc. Yet it is the future because we are able to recycle demolition waste, recycle actually anything to its death, you know. You do not need to preach to anyone in the rural setup or in poor Africa on how to recycle because it's just a knowledge we already have.
Now Kevin's applying this age-old method to prime African real estate, but it's not limited to this market alone.
This building involves various communities within Cape Town, and we employed labor specifically from the township so that we could be able to employ people from the community to come work here. You can imagine about the social economic, the livelihood, the impact, but beyond that, the excess material that we had accumulated here ended up creating a different project, the Langa Agri-Hub project, to support farmers that desperately needs a new facility.
Located in Langa Township, this agri-hub shares its grounds and vision with 16 on Lerotoli, a contemporary art gallery and one of Edgar's favorite places in Cape Town.
I love this space because it speaks to that can-do attitude. These are three young people from Langa itself that said, why can't we have a world-class contemporary art museum in the heart of Langa, and we'll just do it ourselves and we'll do it on our own terms. And for me, I can't think of a more vibrant node in the city where that kind of energy is aggregating and is visible with some incredible art.
Opened in 2019 by local brothers Kanyo and Mpilo Ngukana, 16 on Lerotoli is dedicated to enriching the Langa community through art.
Langa, the first township in Cape Town, was established under the Urban Areas Act of 1923. This act was designed to segregate black South Africans into designated, isolated locations that separated them from the broader economy. So Langa has a rich history in culture and is known for the pivotal role it played in the struggle during apartheid. So Langa is very much known for its art scene and its dynamic cultural and musical history. And that's exactly what we wanted to do in this space, is highlight that and put that on a world platform.
Showcasing work of artists both from this very community and from across Africa, the space has become a cornerstone of cultural inclusivity and identity.
We think it's very important for us to stay grounded within our identity, especially in the rapid mists of urbanization and globalization, as it gives us a sense of belonging as well as a continuity. 16
on Lerotoli exemplifies this by how urban areas can use art and culture in their everyday life fabric to create vibrant communities where people from all different backgrounds can come to connect. So as African cities continue to grow, 16 on Lerotoli highlights the importance of creating and fostering creativity and community engagement as well as sustainability.
The Nairobi skyline for me is one of the most beautiful in the world. You can see lots of different tall buildings that have come up probably in the last 15, 20 years.
Vera Bukachi is a third-generation Nairobian and works for Arup, a global design and engineering firm.
My role has been to think about being bold and being innovative about how do we deal with some of the challenges in the city.
In the face of rapid urbanization, some of these challenges include poverty, pollution, and climate mitigation.
Our Nairobi city in the 1960s, so 60 years ago, was only 350,000 people. We're now 5 million people, and in a generation we're going to be about 10 million people. How do we cope through those different eras of rapid growth? How do we cope through the reality of climate change? And how do we deal with that in a way that ensures that the people who are living in those cities are able to live and thrive?
This is particularly pertinent within the city's informal sectors, which Vera says are home to between 60 to 70% of Nairobi's population.
So we're driving through Kibera now, and Kibera holds a special place in my heart because I grew up around the corner from Kibera. Some people, they'd say it's the largest settlement in Nairobi. Sometimes they've called it the largest settlement in Africa. It's very dense, a very complex place, a very beautiful place, full of life and culture and vibrancy in a way that I think some people underappreciate if you just drive through and you don't get to experience it. Kibera has a lot of complexities like a lot of other informal settlements in Nairobi, and in many ways I think Kibera are essentially the coalface of our cities. So everyone's nannies, everyone's cleaners, everyone's builders come from settlements like Kibera. And they essentially help keep the formal part of the city alive, the formal part of the city moving.
And it is within these very communities that Vera focuses her efforts, collaborating with local partners like KDI, a non-profit revitalizing underutilized spaces.
Some of the work that I've been involved in has been supporting building of public spaces in Kibera, safeguarding some of these spaces which would otherwise be dangerous through engineering and design, put in features that enable that area, for example, to flood without risking other lives. At the same time, making sure that it's a space that is publicly inclusive, has got space for children to play, has got space for mamas and papas to wash their clothes, but then adding value to that space, you're actually improving the resilience of those who live in and around that area.
Despite the significant hurdles she faces in her work, Vera is committed to creating a more socially inclusive and resilient future.
We've been able to positively impact thousands of people, and for me the next step is how do we then impact tens and hundreds of thousands of people.
Culture can be a unifier, according to Joy Mboya, the founder of a multidisciplinary arts and culture center in Nairobi.
The idea of culture is not just about the creative expression or the artistic expression. It's really around holistic life. What does it mean to feel whole, to feel complete, to feel safe, to feel that you have a livable environment in your neighborhood?
A trained architect and an icon within the Nairobi arts community, she has been following the development of the city with great interest her entire career.
Nairobi itself, emerges at the end of the 19th century, 1896, 1898. The city comes because there's a railway that is coming from the coast, coming inland. It's part of a colonial enterprise. And you're finding communities who are now coming together in this settlement that we call the city and beginning to find ways of living together and tolerating each other. So to the African, the city was not home. The city was an alien space. The city was a place that you probably came to work. But now we have a situation where we have people who are Nairobians. So there's no home that they're going to go back to. This is home. And this particularly is the younger generation.
And a key area of focus for her is fostering spaces that spark creativity, identity, and cultural expression, particularly amongst the city's youth.
We're at Mukuru. So Mukuru is one of the informal settlements, sort of south of the CBD of Nairobi. We have a relationship with Mukuru as the Go Down Arts Center because they're community-based organizations who collaborate with us. And in fact, we're going to be visiting one of them. It's run by a young man called Nelson Munyiri. We know him as Nelmo. He runs a hub called the Mukuru Youth Initiative. So this space, I think, is another great example of how urban settlements in Nairobi are beginning to see the way in which community energy and community efforts and community impact can begin to shape and change the way that we live.
Across the city, public spaces like this play an important role, with Book Bunk being a particularly recognizable institution.
Did you imagine yourself holding your own book? Does anyone want to tell me what the name of their book is?
I think public spaces can make people feel connected, can make them feel united to their community, and allows them to converse and exchange dialogue in a way that doesn't happen anywhere else.
Founded in 2017, Book Bunk aims to transform Nairobi through restoring public libraries.
So far we've restored not just libraries as in the architectural sense, but also what they mean philosophically, what people do in them, how people feel when they walk in, and how they can serve as kind of solution centers. Come to the library to solve a problem before you have to pay someone to do it for you, because the information you need is probably in this room first, and you can start with that.
They see libraries as vital public centers for art, heritage, and knowledge, nurturing a sense of belonging and celebrating the richness of cultural exchange.
I hope that in a few years, in a few decades, especially some of the younger faces that I see at the library, I hope that this becomes something that they can refer to as a time in their lives that help them to see the world differently.
And find something new, find something that changes their mind, that exposes them to a new path, a new way of thinking, a new potential career, that they have somewhere to escape to when their homes are not necessarily safe, that they have somewhere to come to that gives them safety first before anything else.
It would not be a festival without writers. No. We're just brilliant. We're just talking to ourselves. Just like Vera and Joy, they too aspire to bring communities together to build a more equitable and connected city for the future.
The experience of being here at the festival is just lovely. Everybody's lovely. You know, it's very warm and friendly. There isn't really a division between writers and audience.
This whole idea of creating space to include and bring in other voices to help you make a city that works for everyone, I think is really important and timely now. And I think that is an important lesson that can come from African cities, is that the city will need to be designed and developed with everyone. And so the strategies of how to include people in this way, systematically and strategically, I think is the lesson for the planner today.
For me, Lagos, it's the energy. The city never sleeps. There's also that can-do spirit that I really love about Lagos.
Jumoke Samuel is a Nigerian storyteller, cultural producer, filmmaker, and curator.
Lagos is regarded as the epicenter of creativity, whether in the west of Africa or even to the rest of Africa and to the rest of the world as well. What excites me is the possibilities.
She founded one of the country's first art incubators, and in 2019, she created a VR film called Lagos at Large, showcasing the city's multifaceted nature.
We also kind of delved into more complex issues that is very particular to post-colonial societies such as Lagos, you know, so the issues of urbanization, gentrification, stratification as well, in a way that also is something that people can experience, you know, because that's what VR does. It makes you're right within the city, you're having all these experiences, you're seeing people, you engage in it.
For Jumoke, artists and creatives are vital in shaping Africa's modern cities, ensuring cultural identity remains at their heart. This approach aligns with Nigerian architect Papa Omotayo and his practice.
Really focus on how design and culture can make for a better built environment. It's a space for architects, artists, urbanists, ecologists, material researchers, and cultural programmers, or people that are really interested in different ways of thinking about urban and rural spaces.
Founded in 2014, their operations today span the African continent, yet their roots remain firmly in Lagos.
Lagos has grown at an unprecedented rate, and Lagos will be the biggest city population-wise in the next 10 to 20 years. And Lagos is a hugely complex ecosystem that requires like deep thinking and planning to create. I think for us, important is equitable spaces that are sustainable.
Despite these challenges, Papa and his team are dedicated to architecture that's collaborative, socially impactful, and community-oriented.
The projects that we've been working on that I think we're quite excited about, trying to reimagine new civic and cultural and creative spaces for a new generation of makers, right? If we think about the youth population in Nigeria, it's going to hit 75% in the next few years. And we're looking at how we can re-engage our historic urban centers.
And one of their current projects embodies this ethos.
So on here, it's going to be a large down studio space. This column is going to be removed, obviously, to create a full studio. Right now, we're at the heart of Lagos Island. We're at the proposed new Q Dance Center.
which is going to be the first contemporary dance studio, purpose-built dance studio in Lagos. This used to be an existing commercial building, uses a lot of repurposed materials, so it's going to be a really exciting project. It's more than a dance center, it's sort of a community that looks at how dance can empower us, give us new voices. It's on Hawley Street, which is sort of central in Lagos Island, behind the historical part of Lagos that was the administrative quarters. And I think when you're there, you kind of see Lagos in its element. It's very busy, it's quite an intense space, and I think putting a dance center in the middle of this, what is quite a busy, bustling and transactional space in terms of there's a lot of commerce and activity around it, sort of offers an opportunity for rest.
From the creative pulse of Lagos to Nairobi's vision for inclusivity and community, to Cape Town's sustainable development initiatives. These vibrant cities represent far more than just urban landscapes.
Our vision for the future of African city is we need cities to showcase new models and be truly representative of what our local knowledge and inventiveness really means. I think cities that reflect equity and participation are critical in how we think about our future, and also thinking about things about adaptability, reuse, how we engage with our local material heritage into the fabric of these cities.
These next-gen cities are the living embodiment of Africa's dynamic spirit, resilience, and commitment to a uniquely African future.
If we look at the state of African cities, from a certain perspective, one can just see a context of abject poverty and desolation with no future prospects. But if we really understand that what makes a city come alive and what makes a city unique and special, it is always culture. It is always a sense of identity and the way in which people can fashion a sense of belonging that resonates with their deep histories as different peoples. And of course, cities are by definition cosmopolitan. And if you can harness that, you can solve almost any problem in a city because your greatest asset is always the people.